Hey everyone, it's Andrew Maximov here. I'm CEO of Precious Payload, a software that helps you plan and execute a space mission without leaving your office. Today, I wanted to talk about the revolutions in space industry. Um, One of the observations that I made recently about the space industry, which I believe is also true for many other industries, that when you listen to any presentation or industry report or read some article from experts, they always almost always there's a claim that once this technology or like this project becomes successful or this technology adopted or that huge thing will happen, we're going to wake up in a different world. Like everything will change, people understanding your perspective and opportunities, and we'll just be in a completely different environment than we are now. But at the same time, when the actual reality bending things do happen and they are successful, for some reason they almost become unnoticed, like nothing changes really. And I believe that, you know, some people say that the future comes to us in patches. It doesn't come upon us at one time. So that's why it happens. But at the same time, when those things actually happen, yes, there are publications, there are news titles, and then there are just a handful of people who maybe read about it or were working on that project that who understand what happened, and then they would wake up in a different reality. But it doesn't really shift anything for the rest of the people who are sort of looking at the industry. So today I wanted to share two, I think, not of course not unnoticed, but two recent successful projects that were done in the space industry that for me are signaling the start of a new era, and they actually shifted the reality for me. And yeah, so just two short stories about the projects that's been there in the past and became unnoticed. So first is for me is MEV1. So that's Northrop Grumman projects of mission extension vehicle. So it was launched on the Proton launch vehicle, if I'm not mistaken, to actually dock with Intelsat geostationary satellites and extend its lifetime for another couple of years. And why? And of course, we're all seeing like amazing pictures. But what's so special in it for me is that yes, it's the first time that the another spacecraft docks autonomously or almost autonomously with geostationary commercial satellite and then docks with it and starts not to refuel it, but it actually uses its own thrusters to provide station keeping and guidance control for the commercial satellite of Intelsat. So it's not refueling iteration, it's just docking and then using its own thrusters instead of the satellite ones. But what's really special in it is that this is the first time the robotic operation of this kind actually done a significant benefit for the commercial operator. The reality is that all these geostationary communication satellites, they go up in space for 12, 15, or even more years. And because they're so expensive, so a project of launching a comm satellite to geostationary orbit costs hundreds of $1 million between launch costs, manufacturing costs, and insurance costs, and then operation costs, of course. So they are designed to be really robust, and they have to survive in the harsh environment of geostationary orbit for more than a dozen years. And because of that, any financing for such a project is really complex game of banks and even governments and insurance companies and different financial instruments. So because of that, because they heavily leveraged financially, they really start to generate profit for the operator somewhere after the middle or the second half of their lifetime. So it means that this last years is where they're actually printing cash for the owner of for the operator of the satellite, right? So if there's a way of extending that periods of lifetime of the satellites that is beyond, the point where it's already paid back all its financial leverage, then it's actually pure profit for the company. So it's like, this MEV vehicle is extending a life on an airplane. It's like pure cash. So the more you operate the airplane, the more cash it generates. And when you paid off all the loans and leverages for the airplane, it's a pure profit for you. So I'm really excited for it to become a routine operation, and looking forward for MEV2 and subsequent missions, and the really competition in that space. And I really expect all the future geostation satellites to have a standard interface for such operations and for refueling operations as well. That was number one, really special one, and I think it's really a sign of new era. And the second study is the Marco Cubesats. So the Marco Cubesats were launched together with the InSight Mars lander, and this is a pair of two CubeSats. If I'm not mistaken, they're around the size of 6U CubeSats, and they traveled together with the InSight lander, and they detached from the spacecraft near the Mars injection orbit, and they made the flyby. So they didn't have the thrusters and the fuel to slow themselves down to inject themselves into the Mars orbit. So they just were on a flyby trajectory, and they had a complementary. So their mission was not critical to the mission on the InSight lander, but they were serving a complementary goal for this mission of relaying the transmission from when the lander would descend into Martian atmosphere and lands on the surface of Mars. They would relay the signal instead of relaying the signal through the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. And in this case, basically, they gave us almost a live stream, of course, with a time delay of the landing event and sequence of the InSight lander. Anyway, so what's so special about it is that the CubeSats became really popular among the commercial operators in LEO orbit, partially because they are using commercial off-the-shelf electronics, and they became cheap enough for universities and commercial operators really to test that, hey, we think that commercial off-the-shelf components would work in LEO orbits because there's no radiation, right? We're protected by Earth there. And that hypothesis did work, right? They actually do survive there, and there's no problem in using quite cheap off-the-shelf electronics there. But then there was even more bold vision that, hey, what if we test the same or like slightly more robust electronics in deep space, in the radiation environment? So how long will they survive? Will it be feasible, et cetera, et cetera? And the problem is that there's not many commercial applications, and it's quite expensive to hitch a ride on a deep space rocket, right? So the Marco CubeSats was the first time NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, actually spent less than $20 million on a project and actually launched CubeSats spacecrafts to deep space, to Mars, and they worked out flawlessly. So it was really successful mission. And I think that really proves the hypothesis that, hey, we can do that for less than, the whole project can cost less than $20 million. So let me give you a perspective. Rocket Lab Electron Launch Vehicle can launch up to 25 kg of sensors, so like a huge big CubeSat or pair of CubeSats, to Venus orbit or Mars orbit or to asteroids in asteroid belt, right? Yes, that those would likely be the flyby missions, but again, we can play with that. And the launch of the Electron to deep space, I think is going to be anyway less than $10 million, maybe 10, 11, because you have to have the kick stage, right? Let's say roughly $10 million, right? The CubeSats with some more robust electronics or some radiation shielding, I'm not specialist in that, but I assume that they could be, let's say, 5-6 million a pair. So suddenly you have 15 million or 16 million for an asteroid rendezvous mission or a private space science mission. That's really is really affordable, and you can have your own rides to space on Rocket Lab Electron launch vehicle, and you can really use most of the commercial off the shelf electronics. And I think that's I hardly believe why no one is talking about that. Come on, like for all this really wealthy, people out there in the Gulf countries and in US and elsewhere. Come on, guys, for you're trying to do something to leave a trace in history, right? So people remember you. You can spend again $15 million and 2 or 3 years to develop a mission that will go and prospect the asteroid or do some private space science mission in the orbit of Venus or an asteroid belt. Come on, guys, it's really affordable. Like it costs less than building another skyscraper or what's not. So I really applaud that, and I'm looking forward to the Capstone mission by NASA again. That will be launching a CubeSat to the lunar orbit. And again, that will be another sign that it can be done. It's really affordable. We have to do that. So I'm really encouraging and looking forward for wealthy people to start just doing deep space missions using CubeSats. That's all I have to say. Thanks.